What's up, everybody? This is your host, Jackson Mitchell, and we are back with another episode of the Walk On Mentality podcast. This evening in the studio, we have the owner and founder of an Austin institution, Mr. Ryan Hess. Ryan, appreciate you joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Absolutely. So I was thinking about how would I start this off a little bit ago, and I want to ask you, what was one win, either from this week or today specifically, that comes to mind for you?
Um, well, the launch of the Kipchoge colorway in both the Alpha Fly and Vaporfly happened today,
Okay.
and it was a big win for the store and just sales and boosted confidence and a good way to we had our best August ever, and it's a good way to end
Let's go.
in that. Yeah, so it was like the last day of the month. Sometimes people are tight on spending. They got rent due, mortgage due, what have you, bills, and so usually it's like you end on kind of a quieter note, but with that release today at the end of the month of an already busy month with back to school and tax free and all that, it was like a great way to kind of ramp up. As leading into September when you're starting to cool off and get better weather for fall marathon season.
Yeah, congratulations. That's awesome.
Exciting,
So tell me a little bit about, I think it makes sense to me from the standpoint of, you sell a lot of things inside the Loop, but it's, kind of a shoe store. Is the Kipchoge colorway releasing specifically like a win for the Loop, or is it, more of a win for like Nike, or what is the structure of how that directly impacts the Loop?
I think it's definitely a big win for Nike, and we're just a small blimp on that, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
I mean, just because Nike's making the big money, they have a lot more, bandwidth to order more of those shoes, where we have a small, I think we only have like 40 pair total or something. But for us, that's a good little blip and bump in sales, and it was great. But really, yeah, I mean, if you think about it, just the story of what that guy's done, he's our version of Roger Bannister, who was the first human being to break 4 in the mile, So
Yeah.
Kipchoge, for those who don't know, that he is the first human being to ever break 2 hours in the marathon, 26.2. So the shoe that he broke it in, which is the Alpha Fly, which you've tried on. I don't know if I don't think you ended up getting him, or did you?
Nah, I think I got that's the thick soled
Thick
orange
ones.
one, right?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
did get that one,
So
actually.
the shoe that you ran in, then you did your marathon in that.
Yeah.
One. So the shoe you did, that was a shoe he used to break 2 hours in the marathon. So this shoe is a shoe that was limited edition with his colorway on it. It has like his signature and all that. So it's just kind of cool, like memorabilia,
Right.
Considering like the significance of what he did in that shoe, and that was the shoe. I mean, there's new iterations, and this is, I guess, the second iteration of that shoe, but it's still the shoe that he used when he broke 2 hours for the marathon. So it's like a cool story. I mean, we're one of a few, I'm going to say a few stores, probably a couple hundred stores that are carrying it, but still a small release. It's like cool all the way around. Obviously, bigger milestone for him,
Yeah.
and for his brand and Nike and their brand. But it's cool that we get to, as a small little running shop in Austin, get to be a part of that story too.
Yeah. And Kipchoge's thing, I'm trying to remember, is it just no limits, or what is he right?
It's no. Oh, now I gotta remember exactly what the verbiage is. It's no human is limited.
That's
No
what it
human
is.
Limited. Yeah, so it's just that you shouldn't put. No one should put limitations, and I think obviously this is pretty relevant to our conversations and your podcast in general. No human should put any limitations on what they can achieve with the right, mindset, training, goal set, team. I mean, because he gives credit to everyone. Nike
Yeah.
is a sponsor, his teammates, his coaches. He's doing it all right. I mean, he's in a small village in 7,500 feet in Kenya, Africa. Wow. No hard surfaces, running on all soft terrain. Gets all these shoes, like runs 20 miles a day, but they break it up, and it's all soft surfaces. He takes a nap in the middle of the day. Like, his
Living the
full-time
dream.
job is pro run. Yeah, I mean, he is Spartan lifestyle. Like, it's not really any wonder that he's breaking world records with the regimen and also the recovery and no processed food, like all organic, healthy,
Right.
healthy whole food, all that stuff.
All the things.
Yeah.
So when the Loop first started, I guess first and foremost, will you share a little bit more about what the Loop is, just for the audience who isn't from Austin, but also, when the Loop first started, did you have Nike shoes on the shelf?
Well, yeah, it's funny you say that. So we had been in communication with them right before we opened, and we opened up, I guess, middle of December, and we threw a big party in December, there's this national event that happens every year called the running event, and it's at the Austin Convention Center. And we threw a party. It was white wall. Didn't even have anything in there except for like some neons. We threw a couple of our vendors, Brooklyn Running, and can't even remember who the other one was. We just did some pop-ups with them in the store. And Nike came in and kind of crashed the party, and we partied. And we were like, hey, like, you know, we think this is a perfect store. And the national sales rep was there that night.
Wow.
And he ended up writing me like a handwritten letter. He's actually no longer sadly with them anymore. But we just hit it off. A good, you know, good time, right place. And a month later in January, they ended up opening us up. So they weren't there in day one per se, but they were there pretty much from the beginning. And I think a lot of that is obviously, as anything in life, is relationship focused, and some of it was, you know, kind of luck and right place, right time. And they saw the atmosphere and what we were building and the brand specific, you know, more than just a brick and mortar or just old man's running store, for better or worse, that it was going to be more of a brand and try to elevate the running scene, and they really want to be a part of that. And yeah, it's been a win-win for both of us, I think. So
yeah, that's really cool to hear, because you know, we were just talking about when I first moved to Austin. I remember coming into the Loop and being like, I had never felt that kind of vibe just in a running shoe store. You know, my experience in running shoe stores was like Luke's Locker in my hometown.
Sure. And
of course, not knocking Luke's Locker or Foot Locker or Finish Line or any shoe store, but like you're in there and you're like, man, like this just feels a little bit different. What year was that you guys opened up?
So that was December of 2017, almost 2018, because we opened up, like I said, middle of December. So
okay, so almost 6 years at this point. You know, what led you to decide, you and Pam, like, to open up that store? Were you guys, let's, I guess, take it way back, because I know you ran in college, and like let's take it way back, because I know there's a story here. But where did your running roots get planted?
Yeah, could try to make it somewhat relevant to the walk-on mentality, because I was a walk-on at Adams State.
There you go.
Just ran, you know, middle school, high school, but I also played football in middle school. Wasn't very good. Didn't have the frame. I was like 100 pounds. I was like starting linebacker on the B team because I had the heart and I could, you know, play with the heart.
Yeah.
I just didn't have the frame.
Yeah.
And then got to high school, and my the O-line coach for the varsity was also the head cross country and track coach, and he ran at UT. So he just looked at my frame and he was just like,
what are you doing?
For football, you know, run cross country and track, and probably the smartest decision, because I wasn't ever gonna start as a footballer. I just didn't have the frame. I had the heart, but didn't have the frame.
All right.
But yeah, so ran in high school. We were pretty good. I mean, I led our team to regionals and cross, and you know, ran like 4:30 something a mile. So
Wow.
Which isn't bad. I mean, it's better than average. It's not like I never made it to state or anything like super competitive. Got in a pretty bad car accident in 2006, I guess. Yeah, it's been a minute for sure. I was like 19.
Okay.
Had a near fatal car accident, like jaws life. I think I mentioned this to you, but yeah, like
Collapsed lung, like
collapsed lung, everything. Yeah, just hydroplaned on Cesar Chavez, like actually pretty close to where the store is now. Kind of crazy story.
Wow.
I was living on East Cesar Chavez, hydroplaned. They had to, like 20 minutes. They had to take get the jaws of life to like cut me out. Had to do observatory surgery, like cut me completely open, 36 staples, because I had internal bleeding. They had to like get in there quick and find out. So I had like diaphragm collapse, lung collapse. They had to drain the lung and re-raise the diaphragm. Cracked vertebrae, cracked ribs. Hand was pretty broken, like big old, like 2 or 3 broken bones in my hand.
Yeah.
A little bit of concuss and amnesia. They also, I woke up out of from the accident, out of the surgery, and didn't know what was going on. I had a breathing tube down my neck. I actually pulled it out.
Oh my gosh.
It was like spitting up blood, and I was like, what's going on? Where am I? I do vaguely remember this.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh gosh, like, you're in the hospital. Yeah, actually, you're fine. And they like had to give me sedatives, and like had to basically, I mean, I was, at that point, they gave me sedatives to where I wouldn't come out of it again, because they didn't want me doing that, because I needed the breathing tube. Right. But I was handcuffed to the bed. So my mom came in and saw me handcuffed to the bed. She's like, what is going on here? And they had to explain to her, like, what happened. So apparently, I don't know, anesthesia doesn't have a great effect on me. I don't know.
Yeah.
You would think after all that I would just have been zonked out. But then... ironically, or not ironically, I'm not sure, the medicine from that, I don't even remember the car accident.
Really?
So I had to kind of piece it together. I remember before it, and then I remember that. I remember pulling the breathing tube out, but I don't really have any. And they say it kind of helps with that, and it's kind of good, so you don't have any like PTSD and stuff like that. I had a little bit driving in the rain because it was actually rain that caused me to hydroplane that night. Shortly thereafter, but it's kind of all gone. Anyhow, starting to ramble as I told you I could, but that was when I was 19 years old, right out of high school. That was probably that was my freshman year. I think either my end of my first semester or second semester in when I was just going to community college, and a year later, January. Yeah, that was December. So January of the next year, I walked on to Adams State.
Where's Adams State?
So Adams State is in a little old town in south central Colorado. It's basically in the San Luis Valley. It's the closest thing you would know is the Great Sand Dunes National Park.
Okay, yeah.
So it's or like Buena Vista. It's like 30 minutes from Buena Vista, or like 90 miles east of Durango.
Okay.
So it's 90 miles, but it's about almost 2 hours because you got to go over mountains.
Right.
You're in the pass. You got to go over the pass to get there. It's a beautiful town. It's like 7,500 feet. It's a great running town. It's actually the second highest altitude for college other than Gunnison.
Wow.
In the States. So
wow.
It's like the second highest. So super high. Had the car accident at 19 years old. When I was 20, I moved up there and walked on and the doc said, I mean, when I had the surgery, he was like, you're going to have a full recovery. And sure enough, I did. I mean, the first year after the car accident and adjusting to the altitude was
tough.
Killer.
Yeah,
but
I would
then after
imagine.
a year, I did like get in better shape and could see big jumps.
That's unbelievable considering a collapsed lung and diaphragm and like,
yeah.
I mean, everything would lead you to believe like I'm not going to be able to ever breathe like that again.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
Yeah. Anyhow, yeah. So did that, walked on, got some injuries, nothing serious, but just like knew that like, and also like saw like these guys that I was running with were just like running like 13 and 14 minutes in the 5K. I mean, my PR is like 15:57,
right?
Which is like great for a girl, but it's just better than the average Joe. But it's just like it's not professional, It's like semi-pro. It's like I could just like this. And the good thing is I tested the limits, and because my biggest thing after the car accident was like I don't want to have any regrets. I just want to like live my life and know that I don't want to be old and have any regrets.
Like
so
what if?
Yeah, exactly. So I was always good at running. I wanted to go up there. I wanted to test it. I saw that I was good, better than average, but it wasn't like I wasn't going to be an Olympian.
Right.
But I at least wanted to test the waters and just kind of see. You don't know till you know.
Yeah.
And the friendships, camaraderie of that team. I mean, it was definitely a Spartan lifestyle. I mean, those guys were running 100 miles a week. I mean, putting in 2 hours a day, plus usually an extra 2 or 3 days in the weight room to try to cross train and stay healthy.
Right.
And I loved all that. But ultimately, it's just like I said, I got some small injuries and just knew it wasn't really going to be. It wasn't my future to get to the next level.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, I'll just go back. I transferred into Texas State, started working at a store called Runtex. That was a huge store in Austin. I mean, they were basically like legendary. They were voted like the #1 running store by Competitor Magazine and Runner's World.
Right.
They were around for 25 years. I worked there for about 8 years.
And what were you studying, by the way?
So kinesiology.
Okay.
So it was exercise sports science up at Adams State and Alamosa, and then transferred in Texas State. Got all those credits transferred in. Just changed the name to kinesiology, but it's basically the same thing. Sports exercise science. It's just kinesiology. I'm actually 30-something credits short of graduation.
Oh, really?
So yeah. So ironically, I got all my credits in, was a senior, and then found out that I was getting promoted if I wanted. I was working at Runtex, was assistant manager at that point, and going to school part-time, working full-time.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had an opportunity to take over to be the full-time store manager, and it was a pretty big bump and full health insurance.
Yeah, big time.
And I was like, well, I can just do this and take school, take a class or two or put it on the back burner, and that's what ended up happening. And then, ironically, in now I have to really think back, 2012, I guess it was, 2012, 2013, but I think it was 2012, Runtex, they went out of business. What happened is they were running behind, they'd expanded too quickly, they actually were behind on their taxes, so they
Oh,
came
wow.
and they locked up the doors.
Wow. Yeah.
And so it was forced. And I was like, oh, I'm going to go back to Texas State, finish. I only have a year left. I can just finish up my degree. And then I got approached by a business partner, an ex-business partner, and a former investor of Runtex. He was like, hey, why don't we partner up? I can finance this, and you can run it, and we'll do this. And so that's what happened. So then, in I think it was, I want to say 2013. Yeah, it was 2013 because I was there almost 4 years. 2013, we started Ready to Run. That is still in business. It's
And
up
that's a
on-
store?
Yeah, and it was actually an old Runtex location. So
Okay.
history for the runners in Austin. Ready to Run was actually an old Runtex location. We got the lease after it, didn't make it. They had their demise, and we started there, built that store. 3.5 years. I actually was doing a lot of the work and was just wanting to have full range of control. And so I tried to buy my partners out. They ended up buying me out because my wife and I were only 33% owners. And then that gave us the opportunity to become majority owners. So now we have 67% and open up the loop. And the big reason for the split, and it was successful, sure, nothing like that. I mean, this happens all the time, is obviously we had difference of opinions, but more importantly, we wanted to do all the things that we are now doing at the Loop. We wanted to build a brand. We wanted to have an emphasis on community events and apparel, and be in, and also, and again, nothing against the old store, but also be in a prime location down on the trail.
Right.
So that was it. That store is up on Far West Boulevard, and it does good volume. It's a great store. Is actually one of the only local running shops. It is the only other local running shop left in Austin. It's them and us, and then a bunch of chains of
Wow.
not corporately owned fleet feeds.
Wow. That's
So, yeah,
wild.
So wild. So
Did-
so that's kind of the whole in a nutshell. But yeah, that's kind of how it all happens.
So did Ready to Run or Runtex, was that all shoes, or did they have apparel as well?
So both of them actually. Runtex, like I said, they were around for 25 years. They really built a brand too, and had I don't want to say it's not super similar, but it was pretty similar and relevant in their time, because remember, this is going back 25 years. So it's like kind of hard. It's not apples to apples, but they did really good with the branding. They did all these community events and had involvement in the city. I mean, they helped put on all these road races. They had this logo that was a cowboy boot with wings behind it.
Okay.
Kind of like, the track wings on like a track spike. It's kind of like that, but with a cowboy boot.
Yeah.
And you would see that around the trail like all the time, or races all the time. Like they were just pretty iconic. And
I feel like
pretty
I've
good.
seen it,
You
even
probably
still.
have. No, you probably have. I mean, every once in a while you'll see it, and I'm just like, man, that's crazy. Because, I mean, they now haven't been around for 10 plus years.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. I mean, also aging myself, I'm like, God, it hasn't been that long. But they were around for 25 years and were one of the first running specialty stores in the country, and definitely the longest living here in Austin. Learned a lot from them. Like I said, super successful. I mean, everything. I mean, even Ready to Run. Like I'm happy with every step of the way, and every success story, and everything that has got me to where we're at.
Yeah.
And you learn from everything, and mistake, good, bad, what have you, and try to propel and just keep moving it forward. So.
Yeah. And when we talk about like just your kind of trajectory going from, a sales associate in the Runtex store when you were at Texas State to manager, so on and so forth, you're studying kinesiology. Did you know I want to manage a run shop? I want to build something of my own? Or were you like, a lot of people who study kines want to do something in exercise science or some sort of profession more aligned with like that specifically? Did you know what you wanted to do, or were you just kind of going to get your degree because that's what you thought you were supposed to do?
Yeah, I mean, when I went to Adams, I actually was getting my major in kinesiology essentially, and then a minor in business.
Okay.
And I really thought I either want to be a coach, or because I really didn't ever think that I was going to own a running store, because I worked for Runtex. He had this store, it was around for 25 years. I never thought it was going to go out. So I was like, well, if I'm living in Austin, which I want to, I either want to be a coach or I honestly want to open a bar. That's what I want to do. Thank God I didn't do that. It's like not the healthiest thing in the world. I mean, you could be successful with it, but it's also a lot of, time consumption.
Different lifestyle.
I
Yeah.
mean, not exactly, conducive for healthy or family lifestyle. And I have both of those things, I can say honestly, in my life, and appreciate those now in hindsight. But when you're 20 something, it's like bar and pretty women and
Right.
boozing and just live music. I mean, at that point, I mean, not that Austin's not now, but they were a really big live music city, and I was like, you could really bank on that. As a lot of bars did it for a time, but it seems like a lot of those kind of went wayward just because it's expensive,
Right.
to do all that. So, but yeah, so I guess in a nutshell, I did have a hunch for one of those. I actually thought that if I was going to own a running store, maybe I'd do it in Colorado and have one of my buddies from Colorado help, and we'd go in together.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, I didn't think Austin was ever going to be an opportunity because Runtex had like 4 or 5 stores. It was like, and I wasn't going to go.
Can't
against
compete
Paul.
with that.
Yeah, and I wouldn't even want to. Paul, my old boss, was a good friend, and I was never going to want to do that. But then, yeah, just for better or worse, things kind of fell in the right place.
Right.
And it all worked out.
So, Ready to Run happens. You said there were 3 business partners involved, so it was you, Pam, and somebody else. Is that right?
So it actually, Pam and I were a third, and then
Okay, so y'all were married at the time or together?
We started dating when it opened up and got married like 2 years in.
Okay.
So then she wasn't on any of the contract, but then of course she is because she's married to me.
Yeah.
She's involved. But then it was a couple. So I was the third partner, and then Pam became that.
Okay.
Then obviously after she married.
I got you. So then the business transaction happens where you guys take 67% of Ready to Run. Am I understanding that correctly, or is that was something it went down a different way?
So we tried to, and we went and got a bank loan and tried to buy our old partners out, and they ended up just saying, hey, we want to keep it. And so we ended up saying, okay, well then just buy us out. And so they ended up buying us out, and we took that loan and ended up buying, using that money to start the Loop.
Okay.
So, yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So when it came to starting the Loop, have you guys been in the same spot the whole time?
Yeah, we've been in the spot. So we signed the lease in June, so it's been over 6 years.
Yeah.
Although it took 6 months because we had to do a renovation to get going initially. So it's been a little over 6 years. They've been that location.
So talk to me a little bit about the process of building your baby. I mean, you knew that you wanted, apparel that was different than just a typical like tank and like half tights and shorts. You knew you wanted community, the location down by the trail, the Loop is that, and the logo is it the track. Like, talk to me about actually like putting together this plan for what you're going to open the doors on and that whole process.
Yeah, I mean, I could probably be here all night, but I'll try to not ramble on about all of it. I mean, it was honestly a team process. We actually had a good friend. He's actually a pretty well-known Austin artist. His name is Tyler Gwynn. Mm-hmm. He does a lot of photography, or excuse me, not photography. He does a lot of paintings. He does do photography too. He actually has done some for us. But we hired him to do the branding for us. We did a lot of brainstorming with him. Also, a good friend of ours, David Fuentes, is a really good runner in town. He's made a couple of Olympic trials. He helped us at the time do some our initial website. He did a lot of that work. Mm-hmm. And then it was just a lot of Pam and I, spitballing ideas and concepts and what we wanted to do and how we could kind of elevate the running world. And her biggest thing, and she gets a lot of credit for the aesthetic and the apparel and that aspect. I get a lot of, the old school running and knowing shoes and being kind of the shoe dog and mm-hmm. Having kind of being tapped into a lot of the running culture, although she has a lot of that as well. She always said at Ready to Run, she's like, I wouldn't buy any apparel wise. She's like, I wouldn't go in there and shop. She's like, I want to shop that me and my friends and women would come in and want to buy apparel and like she was actually when we just opened the shop, she had just left working Lululemon and was working in an event space. So we also were able to get this all of that, as well as she's working in a interior design company most recently up to. So all of those backgrounds that she had, events. I mean, we do events all the time. Obviously, that helps you plan some friends' weddings, but we've actually had one couple get married out in front of our store.
No kidding.
Believe it or not, yeah. And they had the reception there afterwards. And I mean, it was awesome. A small little ceremony, but they did do that. So that worked. Obviously, the Lululemon, was huge because she knew what turns over. I mean, the volume those guys are doing is huge, massive.
Right.
And then, just like curating the right apparel lineup that men and men too, but women specifically for her would want to buy and sell. That isn't just going to be, just your traditional running store. Because honestly, running stores in our industry really struggle with selling apparel.
Yeah.
They can sell shoes really well, but it's one thing that they always struggle with. It's usually like 10% of their sales, and I don't know the exact number, so I don't want to give any ballpark, but I know that it's 2 or 3 times that easily.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're just doing a lot better than what the industry average is, and I'll give my wife and the staff a lot of credit on a lot of that stuff. So.
And is it literally just having the eye to know what the right stuff is to bring in, or is it actually designing and creating your own line of apparel that, from Pam's experience and, some of the people who work in the shop, maybe like they've designed this apparel to be stuff that they know people are going to want to buy?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a little bit of both, because we've seen that we wanted stuff that nothing on the market was providing, so we ended up doing some of that with some of our apparel. And I mean, it's a small, size run. It's just a few pieces, but we have done that ourselves, just because in Texas, like, you want a short that doesn't chafe.
Right.
It's still gonna be durable in the heat. So our half tights are that. I mean, they're a little bit heavier, but they're not heavy. But you don't chafe. They're really good, moisture wicking properties. They have pockets, which a lot of running shorts don't have enough pockets for your phone and for gels when you're running a marathon. So we were just, filling a void that we saw we needed. And then on top of that, we've been in a position where a lot of these vendors will give us samples of stuff to try it out, and we've been able to test it out. And we are runners. I mean, that obviously helps too. I mean, all the staff is all runners, whether it's, middle distance runner, 800 a mile for those that don't know, or all the way up to marathoners, which majority are marathoners at the shop, marathon runners, that is, at the shop. So we test the product, whether footwear, gels, nutrition, apparel, so that we know kind of what works. What works for us usually can translate.
Right.
So that's kind of the blessing, and also I think just, why I think on a small scale we've been able to become successful in a small, 5-year windows, because we have the passion, we have the insider's knowledge, because we're runners ourselves. It's like, it's just something that you do and you have passion for. It just comes a little easier than if you were just to open a business and just, say, okay, come on and shop with us or something, and we've seen a lot of people that have struggled with that in our industry for that reason. If you're just getting in the running shoe business to make money, or just to sell shoes,
You don't really understand it.
Yeah, you don't understand the concept. Like, it's about community. It's about giving back to a degree. I mean, even though, yes, you're in business to be in business and make money, but at the same time, you're trying to help people run their first marathon, or achieve run a mile without walking, or just stay active and stay healthy,
right?
Or get the right product that's going to help them achieve those goals.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a hobby, yes, but at the same time, it's also a lifestyle, and it's also can add years to your life, and it's so much more than just running.
For sure.
At least and I think you can attest to this too. Running your first marathon, like, it's a lifestyle, and there's a lot of passion, and I think at least I hope we translate that to our consumer. So.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a funny story about the shorts. Like, I bought a pair of shorts that had no pockets for that marathon, and I attached gels to my waistband with like safety pins, or paper clips rather, or no, safety pins.
Yeah.
And literally probably like 200 yards into the race, I was holding 8 gels in my hand. And so having those pockets built in is huge. And then, I'm actually curious to ask you this, because kind of to your point about understanding the running lifestyle and what running really can be. Like, for me, when I got done playing football, I was 240 pounds, and I thought, I'm never running more than 2 miles. There's no way. When COVID hit, that's when I first started running a little bit more, and I started to realize, like, A, this is kind of therapeutic and soothing, but B, like, kind of to your comment earlier about, like, testing that threshold and that limit, and seeing, like, I just kept seeing, like, wait a second, I can run a little bit further than I thought. And then the next week it was like, well, how far can I go this week? And it was just this, it's kind of like just stacking wins. Like, every time you go out, it's like a win.
Stacking bricks.
Yeah. So how has running obviously running's played a massive role in your life, but like, can you speak to like the real value and impact that it's made on you?
Yeah. Well, first, and I don't want to ramble too much, but I'll tell a little story of, because you're an ex-football player, and I have a really good friend who's an ex-football player. And the only reason I bring this up is because I think it's relatable to a lot of those that aren't marathoners, and just goes back to the walk-on mentality. And like you said, you never thought you'd run again. You did 2 miles, and then you ended up running a marathon. Or even Eliud Kipchoge, right? No human is limited. I mean, his is obviously the extreme, but it just goes to show that, with the right discipline, attack plan, training, team, community around you, you can do anything, right?
Right.
So Kale is my buddy's name, Kale Stubb. He lives in Austin. He's an ex-NFL football player. He played for Iowa State. He was actually a lineman.
Okay.
He was tight end. He's probably 220 tight end, but the starter was going to go to the NFL. So they were like, you're not going to play tight end. If you gain some weight, you can play lineman. So he did. He got up to 300 pounds, played lineman.
Wow.
Playing in the NFL as a lineman. He played for the 49ers, and I think he played for another team too. I mean, he played for I want to say 4 or 6 years.
Wow.
If you ever listen to this,
A legit career.
Completely wrong. I mean, no, he did play in the NFL for sure.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly how many years, but he did play in the NFL. I apologize for anything that I messed up on that. But how I know him and how We Stay Buds actually ran 12 miles with him last weekend is he's a marathoner now. He's actually a 2:56. He's like a sub 3, 2:58, 2:56 marathoner, sub 3 marathoner. So after he got done with football, he got down to the healthy weight that he was before he started playing football. He's probably 220 now. He's probably closer to 2, maybe even 180.
Yeah.
When he's marathon training. But yeah, he got the weight off, started running, 40, 50 miles a week, and just saw that, he's a jacked dude, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
NFL. I mean, he kind of has your frame, he's like jacked all muscle, but he moves. I mean, he can run clip off 7-minute miles, like nobody's business, and he's just an athlete. He's just has that tenacity, just never give up type of mentality. But I use him. I mean, I'm using him now, but I also use him as a testament to don't let anything get in your way or limit you from what you can do. It doesn't matter if you were 300 pounds or you're 200 and you're all muscle and people tell you shouldn't or can't run a marathon. It's not true. I mean, if you have the right program, the right team, the right mindset, and just do all these disciplines, I think most people can. And it doesn't mean you even have to run the whole thing. I mean,
right.
You got to take some breaks and walk a couple. There's nothing wrong. You're still running. You're still covering 26 miles.
Right.
Not that anyone has to, or even everyone wants to run a marathon. But if you want to run, or if you want to do anything in life, you just go after it. With that same passion and purpose, and anything's achievable. So I want to say that, and then like I said, I think I've diverted a little bit, but to your point of running and how it's kind of helped me out or just given me, I guess, maybe a greater purpose. I know, as stress comes, as anyone's life. And I think I read Goggins' first book. I haven't read his second, but he kind of sums this up well too. It's the thing about him going with the Navy SEALs or running a marathon or anything hard that you do in life, there's always going to be obstacles. There's always going to be, barriers in life. There's always going to be things you're going to have to deal with, whether
Right.
it's family member gets sick, family member dies, and I've had my father pass when I was 6 years old, cancer, all these things happen, I mean, for better or worse, it sucks, but that's just inevitable. I mean, we're all going to pass at some point.
Right.
It's just inevitable.
Right.
But if you can, for me, one thing that's always helped with running is I've ran these marathons and I've had moments where it's oh God, this sucks. I just want to drop out. And then you just get through it and you somehow surpass that, get through it, your mindset's over, and then you get through it and you run a marathon. And, my lifetime PR is 2:39, which is
wow.
6:03 pace.
Flying.
I mean, again, fast for a woman. I mean, for pros, I'm 20 minutes off from OTQ, so it's all relative.
Right.
But I can use that in my life, right? I can say, look, I've suffered, I've ran 6:03 miles for 26 miles, whatever it is, I'm I can survive this,
Yeah.
Sleep deprivation, when you got an 11-month-old and you're just you can't have, I've ran a marathon,
Yeah.
it's just, it's translatable for me. And that's what I think the biggest thing that running has done for me is helps me compartmentalize stress.
Yeah.
And that, look, it sucks now, but this is only temporary. You're going to take this and compartmentalize and just know that it's gonna get over. It's not gonna marathon's not gonna last forever. This whatever it is, depression or this stress or whatever it is not gonna last. It's just a small blimp in the grand scheme of things for your life.
Yeah.
And you just have to. It helps me compartmentalize those things, and it helps you just kind of zen out a little bit and just be like, all right, let's just step back. Just absorb the pain. Just know that it's temporary. It's gonna pass, and eventually you'll be out of this and you'll be back, on the other side.
Yeah.
So,
gosh.
For me, that's, and I think the car accident and a lot of things that I've just, seen in my life, that's how I've let running become my zen, and it helps me kind of compartmentalize a lot of things.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's like I think that's really beautifully put. Like when you speak about depression or anxiety or whatever, it's like it's just a moment, and like
Exactly.
it might suck right now, but like just get through it because you can, and
Mm-hmm.
that's really important. Yeah, I love that. So to jump back into maybe talking about some of those moments and when they've come up with regard to the business, like when it first started, when you guys first opened your doors, what's the process like of getting the vendors, of getting Asics and New Balance and On Running and Nike to want to put their shoe in your store? And did that happen pretty quickly, or was it like you had to build some credibility before some of the maybe quote unquote bigger brands wanted to come hold a spot on the shelf?
Yeah, for sure. Great question, because that is, and I don't know if you've ever been to Sneaker Politics.
No.
Over on 2nd Street.
Uh-uh.
They started in Baton Rouge. They have like 4 or 5 stores in Baton Rouge and New Orleans and Louisiana. That's their home base. They opened a store here in Austin, and that was their whole premise. Like when they opened up, they wanted Nike, Adidas, and all of them. But because they weren't established yet, and there was all these sneaker head shops, I'm blanking on what a few of them are, but that were already competitors. Like they got basically like lowballed and like wouldn't get open. They couldn't get vendors.
Wow.
And then I don't know what their initial name of the brand was that when they started, but they just went with it, and so they called their store Sneaker Politics because it was like the politics of like getting open with the right vendors. And now they're huge. So when South by Southwest happened this year, and they did the movie, and I'm blanking on what it was called. I think it was it Air?
Yeah, the Jordan,
Air with the one on Jordan
Yeah.
with his mom, with both McConaughey and who was it? It was or not McConaughey.
Leo?
No, it was Ben Affleck and Damon. It was
That's
Affleck
it.
and Damon.
Yeah.
And I think the first one they've done since the one they did way back in the 20s
Yeah.
that they did together. But anyhow, they hosted them in their shop and did
Wow.
like a Q&R with those guys. And so like it's funny to see their trajectory from not even be able to carry these brands to hosting, a Q&A with 2 of the biggest, actors in Hollywood.
Huge.
About Nike, and Nike promoting all this and putting it all, planning this all out of their shop.
Right.
So not that I have anything that relevant to our story, but I only say that because that is reality in the running shoe games. Even at Sneaker Politic or even in sneakerhead shops, it's still relevant in our realm and running specialty shops. It didn't hurt us as much for the Loop because I was already established at Ready to Run. So
Okay,
I got
yeah.
pretty much everyone I wanted, if I'm being completely honest, at least on the footwear side, except for Hoka. I think Hoka was the only one.
Yeah.
I even had a few that I ended up bringing in and cutting because it was like they weren't selling as well as they had up at the other store that was kind of in the burbs.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, Nike probably wasn't going to open us. Oh, actually, Adidas didn't either, but they came on. Hoka and Adidas came on just relatively recently,
Yeah.
and are like 2 of our stronger brands. Like Hoka's our second best-selling brand to Nike, and then
Wow.
Adidas is like top 5. So they
Wow.
both do really well. But I do have a similar story to Sneaker Politics at Ready to Run.
Okay.
We only opened up with 4 brands because there was so much competition. They didn't want us to cannibalize sales that they had going on in other stores. So
Okay.
we opened up with Asics, Brooks, Mizuno, and Pearl Izumi. That's not even in business. They're
Yeah.
still in business. They do bike stuff.
Okay.
Like SRAM is the same company that owns Pearl Izumi, but they don't do running shoes anymore.
So basically, at Ready to Run, let's say, just because I don't know what was around, but let's say Ready to Run was here and Feet Fleet was around the corner.
Exactly.
If Feet Fleet had these brands, then they
were
didn't want
saying,
to put
"Don't
them in
open
Ready
them
to
up."
Run.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah. So it is sneaker
Wow.
politics. It's funny. Yeah. And at that point, there was like 15 special running shops, and they were all locally owned. There was no Fleet Feets in town.
Yeah.
There was only 2 locally owned shops. So you could see, for better or worse, we've survived all
It's
that.
competitive.
Oh,
super competitive.
And cycling, the cycling shops in Austin, even more competitive.
Yeah.
But that was oversaturation. There didn't need to be that many shops.
Right.
And now the city's actually bigger, and I think there could be more.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I think there's so many Fleet Feets here. It's like hard for a small shop to justify it. So, but that being said, there's about to be a big On store opening up. That's going to be running
Really?
specific on South Congress.
Wow.
So, and we're partners with those guys. I mean, it's kind of like, ooh, this is going to be stepping, our toes a little bit. But at the same time, there's always going to be competition. I mean, hell, the biggest competition is Amazon, right? They sell more than anything. But,
Right.
you beat them with, just customer knowledge and just community and, yeah, just you got to do your own thing. You can't worry about it. There's always going to be competition. If you do your customer right, they're going to take care of you.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
can't stress it.
It's funny to hear you say that On's opening a store, because my first thought as you were talking about it is like, that's cool. They're going to have great gear. But it's also like, you guys sell On in the shop.
Mm-hmm.
And, can On running create the same community that the Loop has created? Like, I don't know about that. And of course, I'm not asking you to say no shot they can do it, but just these thoughts are running through my mind, and I didn't really realize just how competitive it is. Like, I've never thought about it in that way, but it's really, really interesting. And to know now that there were 15 specialty shops and now there are 2.
Yeah.
And what'd you say it was? The Loop and...
So Loop and Ready to Run, the only 2 local in Austin.
Okay.
I mean, there's plenty. There's like 6 Fleet Feet.
Yeah.
Those aren't local.
Right.
They're chained. There are 2 locally owned up in Round Rock and Georgetown.
Okay.
But the ones in Austin, and there might only be like 5, but there's quite a bit in Austin, and they're all corporately owned.
Yeah, and Georgetown and Round Rock might as well be Waco.
I mean, most Austin consumers, unless you live in North Austin, aren't going to be driving out there realistically.
Yeah.
Because there's plenty in Austin, Fleet Feet or, like I said, us Ready to Run.
So did you guys have any, like, scary moments, for lack of better terms? I mean, obviously, in the 5-6 years that y'all been open, COVID happened. What would have been some of the challenges of just running and operating a business? And I also meant to ask earlier, like, you had a business minor that you were working on, so you had some business acumen coming in, but what's it been like just running a business?
Yeah, I mean, it's, it always has its challenges, as is anything, and you're always, you always got, at least we do, we always have, champagne dreams and a beer budget, so, because you're not, Nike's a $46 billion business, it's just, we're not that by a long shot, and, but we're on a small scale doing fine and paying our bills, and, we're growing every year, and that's what matters for us, and so I think we just have to kind of same thing, compartmentalize it and just be thankful for all the little steps that have got us here. It's like, I think the darkest days were like the pandemic, where it was like, we had to let everyone go for a minute, and we brought them back when we got the PPP money, and then, we were able to do that. And then we had a chance to, we had a lot of extra time, so we were able to grow the private label, and that's actually been doing really well. There's a lot of stuff going on, but it was just like, this sense of losing the community for a minute, and also just like, as we all were, just scared for the world and our future, and our health.
Right.
And not being able to get back to normal. I think as a business owner, but also as a person, as a human being, it was just hard. And ironically, my wife and I felt like we worked more then because our sales were up.
Really?
But when we had to add, we had to go online because it was like a net neutral because we had to bring on this extra inventory as no one's shopping in person. And what we were doing is actually we would stay open 12 to 5 and do curbside, or some people just didn't know, to your point, so many people were working out but didn't know what they needed.
Right.
So they're like, well, I need to come to get shoes. So there's funny pictures. I was like wearing a mask, wearing gloves, because we didn't really know what was going on, and I was like didn't let anyone in the store. I was like till like June, because I guess it was like March, right? From March to June, I was fitting people for shoes that didn't know what they needed out on the front porch. I'd go and get shoes and come back, and it was crazy. I mean, again, we were blessed and so thankful that we're in a business that was actually doing fine through all that, because people were working out and running. You can do kind of solitary.
Yeah.
But then there was all these people that were new to running that didn't know what they needed. So we were happy to give them that advice and expertise. But it was kind of dark and scary because, you're still like, is this sustainable? Like, when can we, get out of this?
Right.
But more importantly, it was like, you're also like, Pam and I caught COVID at the end of 2020. Almost 2021, December, right before Christmas, and didn't even get to spend Christmas with our family in 2021.
Yeah.
After we had survived all of it, and the vaccines were coming out, and we got them as soon as they were, like a few months later. So, that was just some dark days. And again, like, not trying to downplay, a lot of business didn't make it. A lot of people didn't survive, So it's like, I'm not trying to say, woe is me, but as a business owner, like, that was like the biggest, like, it's like pivot. Pivot is because we were closed. So like I said, we were staying open 12 to 5 for all those consumers that didn't know what they needed.
Right.
But then after that, it was mainly online, and that was keeping us afloat. And like, it was a lot of people in Austin who would order. Our consumers wouldn't come in; they just order, and we do deliveries. So my wife and I were.
My
in our
gosh,
pub,
you guys were delivering them
and delivering all these. So like I said, we were actually working harder, ironically, because there's only 2 of us, and before it was like 4 or 5 of us.
Right.
We had to let them go. We brought them back when we could, but for those first 6 months, man, of the pandemic, we weren't working any less. And we were doing that Monday through Saturday. We closed Sunday because it was like this. We got to have a rest day.
One day,
We just got to rest, and there's only 5 hours and heavy alcohol consumption. If I'm being honest, because I'm sure a lot of people were, right. You're stressed and you're just like small business owners. And again, we were paying our bills. Like, I'm not trying to act like all that, but it's like you also are just like, well, how sustainable is this long term? It's like
just so much uncertainty.
It's so much uncertainty. It's like just pivot, and then you're buying all this inventory, and you're just like, well, the online's growing, so let's do this. You're like, well, yeah, I hope we get out of this at some point. It was crazy. So that, I think, and I told my wife, and I still say this today, it's like, if we can survive that, I think we can honestly survive anything. It's just like, it like really makes you realize, and like, I know that when my kid's 11 months and she, thank God, wasn't born and didn't have to deal with all that. I really feel bad for all those impacted, like in high school and college. Like, I couldn't imagine. Could you imagine having your college experience like in the middle of that? Like,
no way. Zoom classes.
It's just craziness. But I know, like, when she's older, like, trying to explain to her, it's going to get so lost in translation.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, if you weren't there, like, how could you explain what, it all going down? But, I think it ultimately brought Pam and I together and made us stronger, and like, just let us realize that we could survive pretty much anything.
Yeah, that's really cool.
So,
what about, how is it running a business alongside your spouse?
Ask me tomorrow. It could be good. It changes all the time.
Yeah.
We've definitely learned to push each other's buttons, but also have learned to, when to just we have to like shut it off at some point, because you could be at dinner and be like, oh, did you get that email, or oh, yeah. And it's like, and if that's, there's no work-life balance, if you're always on, like, it's not healthy for marriage or sanity or business partner, like any of it, right? And so it gets so intertangled that it's hard to know where to push those buttons and where to. So we're getting better as it. We'll be married for 9 years this March. So we've been together and we've known each other for over a decade.
Yeah.
We've known each other for a minute. Not that that's super long for people that have been married for a long time, but we've been business partners for the last, almost the whole time, really, right? We were dating for 2 or 3 years prior, and then we were open, ready to run business partner that in a small scale, and then big time partners for the last 6 years.
Yeah.
Majority owners. So, it's just, it's hard, it's challenging, but also I think at the end of the day, it does make us stronger. And it's funny, ironically, I saw a statistic, and couples in America that own businesses together, their likelihood of divorce is like something low. It's like in the teens, I believe.
Really?
And I just thought that was amazing. I think it just goes to show that, like, there's so much stress, I would imagine. I mean, I don't think that there's not stress in those relationships. I'm not trying to downplay it, but I also think it does. There's empathy and sympathy that you have when you have a common goal and you're doing it, and you're learning to tackle this, but also share your burdens and your loads together.
Yeah.
I mean, I think if you've seen the movie that won all the Oscars, Anything Everywhere All at Once or whatever it was.
I haven't seen it.
You should watch it. It's really good.
Okay.
It's about an Asian couple. It's actually the guy from The Goonies, the
Okay.
Asian kid from The Goonies as an adult, and he's the husband and his wife, and they're like small business owners in a laundromat.
Okay.
And that's kind of like the premise. Like, you got to watch. I don't want to ruin the whole story,
Yeah.
but that's kind of a lot of the premise is just like, just doing it together. It's actually a really good movie, and it was relevant for us because we're small business owners, obviously. But it won like all these Oscars. Jamie Lee Curtis is in it, and that gentleman too. And I'm blanking on what his name is, but I think it just goes to show that like you're gonna have your challenges, but if you can just same thing, just compartmentalize it and step back and just say, hey, look, we have a common goal here. Like, how do we take this goal or this task and work together to achieve, this ultimate, finish line we want to get to. So
Yeah, that's such an interesting comparison, and I think hearing you say that, it completely makes sense, because I think about, playing football or playing a sport, like in the off season when you're grinding together, going through like the suffering, or really just, people talk about doing hard things with people and how that instantly builds like a different kind of bond. So very much like, obviously there's a bond with your spouse, but then you guys, to your point, common goal, same struggles as you're working through building it. It can bring you closer for sure. And hearing you talk about that too made me think about a question like, how important has the passion piece, y'all's passion for running and community and these things, like how important has that passion been just in the entire journey of the Loop?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely can't be understated, because I think, without that passion, I think we would have probably given up on it, a long time ago, And there's days as anything, as marathon training or, training for football or 2 days, anything. It's like there's plenty of times where you want to give up or just like question, or just like, should we sell this or, all this, but they're fleeting, they don't last very long, at least not for us. And, if there's ever a day where they do linger and stuff, then maybe it is time to sell it or, kind of give it up and figure a way out. But, at the end of the day, we're own bosses, and we love what we're doing, and that helps kind of, us get out of bed every morning and wake up with a passion and purpose. And at least from my side, and I think Pam could attest to this too, we find that, we like what we're doing,
Yeah.
I think, as anything, there's certain aspects of our jobs that we don't love. I don't like paying invoices. I don't like, those things. I don't like having to fire people, and, I don't like having to do a bunch of emails and stuff like that. I like just like selling shoes, and I like, learning new things. I mean, doing this private label and all this stuff is fun because learning new stuff, new aspects. That's a little bit different than just retail.
Right.
It's kind of growing the brand, and I love learning new things, especially things that I'm passionate about.
Yeah.
But you gotta have the good with the bad.
For sure.
And I think that passion translates and allows you to suffer through the things you don't like in order to, just like a marathon, right? Like, I don't like hills, but I do them because it's going to help me be better at a marathon. Same
Right.
thing. Like, I do work with the accounting and those things because ultimately that's going to lead to us being a more successful business.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I always ask my guests, my last question is, if you had one piece of advice to leave the listeners with, could be business related, whatever you want, what would that piece of advice be?
I think, for me, it's twofold. I mean, obviously, we're all a victim of our circumstance or just, the path we've led or walked in our lives. I've been close to death a few times, and I could just say life is short. Just make sure you don't have regrets.
Mm-hmm.
So that's probably the biggest piece of advice that I would say. But then the second would also be that, don't limit yourself, kind of like Kipchoge says, no human is limited. Like, don't think because you're too big or, you're too lazy or whatever, or you have cerebral palsy or like what, there's no limitations. I mean, Look at Goggins, right? I mean, the guy was 300 pounds
Yep.
when he had the dream to become a Navy SEAL, and then he got down to whatever I don't even remember, it was 170 or whatever the limit was, and just barely squeaked in, and then became a uber successful, Navy SEAL. That written 2 Pulitzer Prize books, ran and won these 100 miles. I mean, crazy story, and that's just one story, right? I mean, everyone's got their own story. There's a kid that has cerebral palsy. He's ran marathons. I think he's run multiple marathons.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and those are 2 extremes, but they're also great examples of don't be limited by whatever you have going on. I mean, don't, whatever your passion, your purpose is in life, just go after it, with the full force. I mean, there's nothing should be limiting you.
Yeah.
Walk on there and get it done, right?
That's right. Man, well, Ryan, I can't thank you enough for joining me. I've really enjoyed this, and you've been a great guest on the show, so I appreciate it.
Thanks for having us. We really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah. And to the listeners, thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of the Walk On Mentality podcast, and we will see you on the next one.